Ladies and gentlemen, you see, when a woman has been wrong, lied to, betrayed, silenced, that pain doesn't go unnoticed, not by the world, not by her spirit, and definitely not by God, because the truth is, when everybody walks out on her, God steps in. When her heart is shattered into 1,000 pieces, God starts building something new with every single one of them. Now you may not see angels flapping their wings, you may not hear the thunder crack the sky, but listen to me, her strength. That quiet, unshakable power that keeps her standing, that ain't just her, that's God standing with her, God standing in her, God standing for her. The doors that slammed in her face, that was God saying, "Not that way, my daughter, I got something better." The silence she heard when she cried in the dark, that wasn't absence, that was preparation. People will try to crush her, but God will use that pressure to crown her. People will try to erase her, but God will write her name in places they'll never reach. See, when God stands with a woman who's been wronged, she doesn't come back the same. She comes back wiser. She comes back softer, but stronger. She comes back with fire in her eyes and peace in her heart. You can't break her, because she was rebuilt by God himself. So to the woman who was lied to, cheated on, laughed at, left behind, you are not finished. You are not forgotten. You are being fortified. Let them talk, let them doubt, because the same people who threw dirt on your name, they're gonna have to watch you bloom from that same ground. God is standing with you, and when God stands with you, who can stand against you? Pain has a way of making us feel forgotten. When betrayal stings or heartbreak sinks into the deepest part of a woman's soul, the silence that follows can feel deafening. It's in those moments, when the phone doesn't ring, when friends disappear, when tears hit the pillow night after night, that it feels like God is nowhere to be found. But that feeling, that silence, is not absence. It is the sacred ground where God begins to speak in whispers instead of thunder. God does not abandon the broken. In fact, the broken are often where he begins his greatest work. Look at the stories written across Scripture. Time and time again, it's the outcast, the wounded, the betrayed, the forgotten who receive his most profound attention. He never passed by the woman at the well. He never ignored the woman caught in sin. He never looked away from the one who pressed through the crowd with trembling hands just to touch the hem of his robe. If anything, he stopped, he turned, and he saw them. There is something holy about being broken, something the world doesn't recognize but God treasures. When everything else has been stripped away, when there's no pretense left, and your hands are too tired to fight, you're finally in a place where God can meet you without resistance. When you are at your lowest, when your soul is cracked open and your pride has fallen, that is where grace rushes in. He doesn't rush healing. He doesn't throw quick fixes or surface-level comfort. Instead, he comes close, closer than ever. Psalm 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the broken-hearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." That's not just poetic language. That's a promise, a divine truth that God leans into pain with compassion, not distance. When a woman has been wrong, lied to, manipulated, abandoned, she starts to question everything. Was it her fault? Why didn't God stop it? Why didn't he intervene sooner? And here's the hardest truth of all. Sometimes God allows pain to shape us because he sees beyond what we can understand in the moment. He doesn't cause evil, but he does repurpose it. He doesn't abandon us to it. He walks through it with us. We only think he's gone because we're looking for a different kind of presence. But God isn't always in the firestorm. Sometimes he's in the still small voice that shows up when the world goes quiet. And he remembers. Every tear shed in secret is seen. Every silent scream that never left your lips is heard. Every time you felt unseen or unloved, God stood in the room with you, heartbreaking with yours. The brokenness you carry doesn't make you less to him. It doesn't disqualify you. If anything, it's an invitation to lean in, to trust deeper, to be rebuilt from the inside out. God doesn't choose perfect people. He chooses the ones who have been shattered, so he can put the pieces back together in a way that reflects his glory. If your heart has been broken, it means you've loved deeply. If your spirit feels crushed, it means you've fought battles many will never understand. And in that, God sees beauty. He sees the moments no one else saw, when you stayed strong for others while crumbling on the inside, when you forgave what others said was unforgivable, when you kept moving forward, even with wounds that hadn't fully healed. He doesn't abandon women like that. He covers them, he lifts them, he anoints them. God has a way of redeeming the pain we thought would break us forever. What felt like the end is often just a beginning we couldn't see yet. And he doesn't just restore what was lost. He brings back more peace, more clarity, more confidence, a deeper awareness of his voice, a fiercer understanding of your worth. The heartbreak becomes the soil for rebirth. Think of the woman who was bleeding for 12 years. She had been overlooked, outcast, judged, but one touch from Jesus reversed it all. It wasn't just about physical healing. It was about him stopping everything to acknowledge her, to say, I see you. I know what you've been through. You are not invisible. That's what he does. That's who he is. He notices the women no one else sees. He hears the cries no one else hears. He restores what no one else can restore. Even in your most isolated moment, you were never alone. Even in your anger, confusion, or doubt, God remained. He was steady. He was patient. He waited while you wrestled with the questions. He didn't punish you for your pain. He sat with it. He held space for your healing. Sometimes healing looks like quiet mornings when you realize the pain has finally loosened its grip. Sometimes it looks like strength you didn't know you had, showing up in small, everyday ways. Sometimes it looks like finally being able to talk about the past without trembling. That's God. That's his hand, gently, faithfully, bringing you back to life. You may carry scars, but they are not signs of defeat. They are marks of survival. They are proof that what tried to destroy you did not succeed. God stayed. When others walked away, he remained. When you were blamed, when you were misunderstood, when you were told to stay quiet, God was already working behind the scenes, moving, shifting, preparing. You see, God doesn't promise a life without brokenness. But he promises we won't walk through it alone. He doesn't promise we won't feel abandoned, but he promises we never truly are, and he certainly doesn't forget those who have been wronged. On the contrary, he becomes their defender, their restorer, their safe place. What was taken from you, he saw it. What was done in secret, he knows, and he will deal with it, justly, righteously, and in his perfect timing. The enemy wants you to believe the pain means it's over, that you're too far gone, that you've been disqualified from peace or love or a future. But God's word says the exact opposite. He is near to the broken-hearted. That's not metaphor. That's not exaggeration. That is his character. He draws near when others draw back. He speaks when the world goes silent. He restores when all seems ruined. He lifts up those who are bowed low. You may feel broken, but you are not abandoned. Not for a moment. There's a quiet kind of strength that lives inside a woman who has been broken but refuses to stay that way. It's the kind of strength that the world misreads, thinking she's just tough, thinking she's just built differently, thinking she just doesn't feel the weight like everyone else. But the truth is, she feels it deeply. She feels the pain, the betrayal, the exhaustion of fighting battles no one else sees. And yet she keeps going. That strength, that endurance, that courage that seems to rise again and again when everything else falls apart. That strength is not hers alone. It comes from something greater, something eternal, something divine, because no one walks through fire that hot and comes out glowing unless they've been held together by something supernatural. A woman who's been wronged and still chooses love. That's not just personality. That's God's hand holding her heart in place. A woman who's been left behind and still chooses to rise with grace instead of bitterness. That's not just willpower. That's God breathing life into her lungs when she forgot how to inhale. People often admire her, sometimes even envy her, wondering how she keeps her head up, how she doesn't break down, how she still has softness left in her soul. But they don't see the divine reinforcements behind the scenes. They don't see the prayers whispered through clenched teeth. They don't see the nights she collapsed on the floor asking God to take the pain away. They don't hear the silent screams or witness the spiritual battles fought in solitude. All they see is the comeback, the smile, the way she shows up again whole or at least healing. After the world tried to break her apart, her strength is borrowed. It's sustained by grace, by a God who refuses to let her be destroyed by what was meant for her downfall. There's something sacred about divine endurance. It's not about pretending to be okay. It's not about acting unbothered. It's about being held up by something deeper than logic, because her strength doesn't always make sense. It defies circumstance. It appears when it should have run dry. It keeps her standing when everything around her screams that she should have crumbled. She might look composed on the outside, but what's happening on the inside is a constant flow of mercy, a daily renewal of power she didn't create. Isaiah 40:29 says, "He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak." That's her, the weary, the tired, the misunderstood, the dismissed, and yet, somehow, her power increases, not because she's special in the way people think, but because she's connected to the source. She's learned, through suffering, where to turn when her own strength runs out. Some days she doesn't feel strong at all. She wakes up carrying yesterday's pain. She smiles through conversations even though she's unraveling inside. She encourages others while silently praying for someone to notice her own need. But still, she moves forward. That's not denial. That's grace. That's resilience rooted in faith, not pride. She walks not because the path is easy, but because God gives her the legs to move when she has every reason to sit down and quit. It's important to understand that her strength didn't come out of nowhere. It was forged in fire, molded through disappointment. She wasn't born with it. She became it. Through betrayal, she learned discernment. Through heartbreak, she learned wholeness. Through isolation, she learned to hear God's voice more clearly. And through injustice, she found the courage to stand, not just for herself, but for others who couldn't. That kind of strength can't be faked. It comes with a cost, but God doesn't let the price go unpaid. He repays it with purpose. What some people see as stubbornness is really the spirit of a warrior who's been through too much to let go now. She's not stubborn. She's standing firm. And even when her knees are shaking, she's not standing alone. God surrounds her like a fortress. He whispers to her when the voices of doubt get too loud. He reminds her who she is when the lies start to sound familiar. And even when she questions everything, even when she's angry, confused, or numb, he stays. His strength doesn't waver when hers does. His faithfulness isn't tied to her mood. He's constant, unshaken, unchanging. Her story might not have had a fair beginning. She may have been wronged in ways no one will ever fully understand. But God specializes in rewriting painful narratives into testimonies of power. That's why her strength carries a weight to it. It's not performative. It's redemptive. It's the kind of strength that doesn't just help her survive. It transforms the environment around her. Others draw from it. Others find light in it, because God's power flowing through one person can set entire rooms free. She may not know it, but her presence is healing. Her endurance is inspiring. And her vulnerability, her decision to keep showing up with her scars, is part of what gives other women permission to heal too. That's what happens when God strengthens someone. The impact ripples. The overflow touches lives she didn't even know she was meant to reach. Her pain, once a weapon against her, becomes a bridge for someone else's breakthrough. This is what happens when her strength is not hers alone. She becomes a living vessel for God's power. She becomes evidence that weakness is not the end. That brokenness is not disqualification, that the woman people thought would fall apart forever can rise again, not bitter, but better, not harder, but wiser, and with a heart more open to purpose than ever before. There's nothing ordinary about this strength. It's heaven, breathed. It comes in quiet waves, in silent moments when no one's watching. It lifts her when she can't lift herself. It reminds her, again and again, that she doesn't have to carry everything alone. Because her strength comes from the one who carried it all already, the one who understands suffering, the one who walked through betrayal, rejection, and pain, so that when she walks through it, she doesn't have to do it alone. She is not surviving by accident. She is standing because grace won't let her fall. Every step forward is a testament to divine support. Every time she gets up again, it's not just resilience, it's resurrection. Not her strength alone, but His working through her, carrying her, refusing to let her give up, even when she wants to, and that's why she's still here. There are moments in life when injustice strikes so deep it shakes the foundation of everything you believe. When you've been wronged, betrayed, lied about, mistreated, and pushed aside, there's an ache that rises not just from the pain, but from the silence that follows. You look around and wonder, where is the justice in all of this? You cry out for answers. You seek accountability. You hope that those who hurt you will feel even a fraction of what they've made you carry. And yet sometimes it feels like the wicked walk free while the innocent are left bleeding. That's when you must remember a truth that doesn't always scream, but never stops speaking. Justice belongs to God, not to man, not to the systems of this world, not to the court of public opinion, not even to your own desire for revenge. Justice is God's, and He handles it in His time, in His way, and with a precision that no human hand could ever achieve. That doesn't mean He's blind to what's happened to you. On the contrary, He sees every injustice, every false accusation, every abusive word, every manipulative act, every silent betrayal. He sees it all, and He takes it personally. It's easy to believe in justice when everything is fair, but what about when you were loyal and they lied? When you gave your all and they left without warning? When you protected someone who turned around and used your kindness as a weapon? Those are the moments that test your faith, not just in people, but in God Himself. Because if He is all-powerful and all-knowing, why didn't He stop it? Why didn't He step in before the damage was done? Why does it seem like the ones who caused the most harm are the ones thriving, while you're left putting the pieces of your soul back together? God is not blind, and He is never late. His justice doesn't move on our schedule, but that doesn't mean it's not moving. He isn't in a hurry like we are, because His justice is eternal. It doesn't fade. It doesn't miss. It doesn't leave anything unresolved. What may seem like a delay is often divine strategy. What may feel like silence is actually preparation. He is working behind the scenes in ways we can't see, orchestrating redemption, setting things right, bringing clarity, exposing lies, and elevating truth in a way that can't be denied when the time comes. There's a reason Romans 12:19 says, "Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, 'It is mine to avenge, I will repay,' says the Lord." That isn't a suggestion, it's a declaration. God is not asking you to forget what happened. He's asking you to release it into hands more capable than your own. Because when we try to handle justice ourselves, we often do it through bitterness, anger, or fear. But when God steps in, He handles it with truth, righteousness, and mercy. He knows the whole story. He knows the motive behind every action. He knows the pain they caused and the lies they told. Nothing is hidden from Him, and nothing escapes His judgment. That should bring comfort, not fear, because it means you don't have to carry the burden of trying to make things right on your own. You don't have to fight battles that were never yours to fight. You don't have to exhaust yourself seeking payback when peace is already promised to you. God sees the wrong, and he will make it right. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but he will. And when he does, it won't just be about punishing someone else. It will be about restoring you. Restoration is a form of justice. It's not just about seeing the one who hurt you fall. It's about watching God raise you up in spite of them. It's about healing that confuses your enemies. It's about walking in peace while those who hurt you remain tangled in the consequences of their own choices. It's about joy returning to your heart, not because they apologized, but because God lifted the weight off your shoulders and carried you into something better. Sometimes God doesn't bring justice the way we expect, because his justice isn't driven by ego. It's driven by love and truth. He disciplines, but he also redeems. He exposes, but he also transforms. And yes, sometimes he lets people sit in the mess they created until they finally face the damage they caused. But he also works to ensure that your healing is not dependent on their downfall. Because real justice isn't just external, it's internal, it's peace in your mind, it's clarity in your soul, it's knowing you're no longer defined by what they did to you. There will be moments when you're tempted to speak out, to defend yourself, to try and force the truth into the light. But if God tells you to be still, it's not because he wants you to be silent forever. It's because he's handling what you can't. Being still doesn't mean being passive. It means trusting that the truth will rise even when lies seem louder. It means having the maturity to say, I don't need to win this moment because God is writing the ending. And when he writes the ending, no one can rewrite it. That's the power of divine justice. It doesn't just end chapters. It writes better ones. It restores dignity. It restores hope. It restores the woman who thought she would never smile again, and it does so without needing revenge to prove a point. God's justice is complete. It reaches beyond the surface. It heals what people never even apologized for. It redefines your story so that the thing meant to destroy you becomes the thing that sets you apart. God is not indifferent to your pain. He is not slow in keeping his promises. He is patient, strategic, and unfailing. And when he brings justice, it's not to prove who was wrong. It's to reveal who you really are. It's to remind you that you were never forgotten, that your value was never tied to how they treated you, that your destiny is not delayed by what they did. He steps in at the perfect time, and when he does, it won't just be justice. It will be vindication wrapped in peace. You may not see the full picture yet. You may not understand why it happened the way it did, but know this, nothing is wasted, no pain, no tear, no sleepless night. God collects every piece and uses it as evidence when the time comes, and when he moves, you won't have to announce it. You won't have to shout, look what God did. Everyone will see it. Everyone will know. Justice doesn't need a spotlight. It shines on its own. Betrayal has a sting that's unlike any other wound. It doesn't just hurt. It confuses, it shocks, it disorients. It doesn't come from strangers. It comes from those you trusted, those you confided in, those you never thought would twist a knife when your back was turned. It leaves you questioning everything, your judgment, your worth, your place in the world. And in the quiet aftermath, when the betrayal has done its damage and everyone else has moved on, you're left to rebuild from the inside out. But what no one tells you in that moment, what often goes unseen in the wreckage of betrayal, is that elevation is waiting on the other side. It's a hidden pattern woven through the lives of those God calls, those he chooses to use in ways that defy the natural order. Before the crown comes the cross. Before the platform comes the pit. Before the reward comes the rejection. It's not just poetic, it's prophetic, because betrayal has a way of pushing you out of the place that was too small for the destiny on your life. It hurts, yes, but sometimes it's the only way God can separate you from what was limiting you. The betrayal you didn't see coming often becomes the very vehicle that carries you into your next level. Look at Joseph. sold by his own brothers, betrayed not by enemies but by blood, tossed in a pit, left to die, and later imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. But through every twist of injustice, something bigger was happening. Every step of rejection was a step closer to elevation. By the time Joseph stood before Pharaoh, second only to the king himself, he didn't just hold power, he held perspective. He saw how every betrayal led him right into the position God had prepared for him all along. That's what betrayal does in the hands of God. It doesn't break you. It builds you. It sharpens your discernment. It deepens your faith. It detaches you from approval so you stop seeking validation in people who were never meant to carry your calling. It burns away the false comfort of familiarity and forces you into the discomfort where transformation happens. It reminds you that you're not just being moved, you're being prepared. What feels like rejection is often redirection, not away from purpose, but into it, because there are some places you never would have left unless you were pushed. There are some relationships you would have stayed in too long unless they showed their true colors. There are some environments you would have made permanent unless betrayal came in and broke what you were trying so hard to hold together. And once it breaks, you have no choice but to heal forward, to move, to grow, and in that movement elevation begins. God doesn't waste betrayal. He doesn't ignore it. He doesn't overlook your pain, but he uses it. Not because he enjoys your suffering, but because he sees what's coming. He sees what you can't, and so he allows certain betrayals not to punish you, but to propel you, to break the ceiling that you couldn't even see was above you, to close the doors you were too loyal to shut, to sever ties that were draining your spirit under the disguise of connection. It hurts, it's unfair, but it's necessary, and when the betrayal comes, it often comes right before your breakthrough. That's not coincidence. That's the enemy trying to discourage you at the edge of something new. He knows what you're about to step into, and if he can break your spirit now, maybe you won't walk into the next level. Maybe you'll shrink back. Maybe you'll become bitter, hardened, afraid to trust, afraid to love, afraid to rise again. But what he meant for harm, God is already repurposing for your good. There's a certain fire that betrayal ignites. Not a fire of rage or revenge, but of refinement. You start shedding what doesn't serve you. You start praying more honestly. You begin hearing God more clearly. Because betrayal has a way of stripping you down to your core, where everything false falls away, and all that's left is your raw, desperate reliance on the one who never left. That's when the elevation begins, not when you're standing tall, but when you're bowed low, surrendering the pain for purpose. People will see your elevation and think it came out of nowhere. They'll call you lucky. They'll say you're blessed. They won't know the sleepless nights, the silent tears, the gut-wrenching prayers. They won't know how close you came to giving up. They won't see the betrayal behind the breakthrough. But you will, and that's why you'll walk with a humility they can't imitate, because your elevation cost you something. It came through heartbreak. It came through wounds. It came through a process that only God could sustain you through. And when God elevates you, he does it in such a way that even those who betrayed you can't deny it. Sometimes he doesn't vindicate you by proving them wrong. He vindicates you by blessing you in full view of those who broke you. Not to embarrass them, but to remind you that no one can block what he has already prepared for your life. Their betrayal didn't disqualify you. It qualified you. It became the soil from which your next season would grow. The beautiful thing about elevation is that it doesn't just lift your circumstances. It lifts your perspective. You stop needing closure. You stop needing apologies. You start realizing that peace is something you can carry even when people never made things right. You begin to see how all the pieces come together. The tears, the silence, the confusion, they weren't wasted. They were the evidence that something holy was happening beneath the surface. You may have lost people. You may have lost places you loved, but you didn't lose yourself. You found the version of you that was buried under compromise. You found the faith you didn't know you had. You discovered how strong you really are, not because of your strength, but because of God's strength in you. And now, when you walk with authority. When you speak with clarity. When you rise with purpose. Betrayal is never the end of the story, not in the hands of a God who writes redemption into every chapter. It may feel like the end when you're in it. It may feel like the final word when the pain is fresh, but it's not. It's the turning point, the setup, the necessary breaking that leads to your becoming. And on the other side of it is a level you weren't ready for before, but now you are, because you went through the fire and came out refined. You were buried, but you didn't stay down. You were broken, but not destroyed. And now you're not just rising, you're ascending, not because betrayal didn't happen, but because it did, and through it you found the God who lifts. So now you see, what was meant to break you was the very thing God used to build you. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the rejection, it wasn't the end, it was the door, and through it God was preparing you for something greater, something higher, something more aligned with the purpose He placed in you from the beginning. Every tear was a seed. Every silent night was a preparation. Every moment you were overlooked was God setting the stage to elevate you in a way no one could deny. This wasn't just about pain. It was about transformation. You were never forsaken. You were being forged, and now you rise, not in bitterness but in power, not in revenge but in purpose. Because when God stands with the woman who was wronged, no betrayal can hold her back, and no opposition can stop what He has already ordained. The elevation has come, not in spite of what you went through, but because of it, and now you're walking into everything they said you never would, with grace in your heart, fire in your soul, and God at your side.